Not long ago, someone very special to me told me this: don't drown your Mario. Now, some of you may be asking yourself, what on earth am I talking about? Well, let me tell you. She was referring to a now pretty ancient video game called Super Mario Brothers. You might have heard of them. Two little Italian plumbers on a mission to save the princess. Anyways, if you have ever played that game, you might remember how Mario would drown when he would come in contact with water. Falling in the water was obviously not the point of the game. Regardless, if you had the controller in your hand and you were playing this game, you did in fact have the option to drown your avatar, Mario. This mentor of mine went on to tell me a story about how she would play the game, and when she got to the point of giving up, per se, she would intentionally drown her Mario. She wouldn't turn the game off, because of course that would be quitting, but instead intentionally drown her Mario repeatedly until she ran out of lives. This, my friends, is where Don't Drown Your Mario comes from. Why is this important to me, and why does it have anything to do with my testimony as a Christian? Might be your next question. Yes? My life before I found Jesus Christ was drowning my Mario. I was intentionally and repeatedly giving up on life. Yet I didn't want to just get up and turn the game off, because that would make me a quitter. When I was 19 years old, my parents went through a semi-ugly divorce. Shortly after this event, I quit my schooling and started myself on the path of destruction. Following the events of the divorce that still weighed heavy on my heart, my grandfather passed away and my grandmother was diagnosed with breast cancer. I can honestly say that I in no way believed that there was a God in all of this, and if there was, what kind of mad creature was he? It was also around this time that I started questioning my own sexuality. I'd been seeing a young man of my liking for several years by this point, and he was pretty much my best friend. But he didn't really have anything more than that. There was no attraction there. However, I had a best friend at the time, a female, who managed to have my heart. I didn't understand the feelings I had for her, and when I tried to address them with her, she would tell me that I needed psychological help. This is around the time that I started cutting myself. I never wanted to kill myself in the action of cutting myself. I only wanted a way to see the pain that I held inside, somehow on the outside. The cutting remained minimal for the years following. When I finally turned 24, I came out as a homosexual. I hate that word, but I guess it's the only one that really pertains. I lost my fiancé, needless to say. I hurt my family, and not to mention I lost the best friend that I had mentioned had my heart. These events also led to me losing my home. I was living with my best friend and my job because I was working with my best friend. I was living in Sacramento, California at the time and started seeing another girl. This girl ended up being my first girlfriend and my first intimate female relationship. It lasted about 2 weeks officially, but it went on for at least a few years. On multiple occasions, this girl I had fallen in love with would bring her new girlfriends to my home, tell me how immature I was, how stupid my haircut was, and pretty much make me feel about as worthless as anybody. Yet I loved her and continued to hold on to something that was not there. This is when the alcohol and smoking came in as regular activities in my day-to-day. When I would partake in these activities, however, it ignited all the hurt that I held inside and caused me to start cutting myself again. Only this time the cutting seemed to be worse than before. Rather than just cutting myself, I would become enraged and I guess you could say violent. I wasn't violent towards other people, but more brutal to myself. I recall being home one night, punching myself in the ribs as hard as I could repeatedly because life sucks so bad. Another night, I let my friend Matt punch my arm until it was purple from my shoulder blade down to my elbow by playing a game called Arms. Everyone told him he should stop punching me, but not me. I kept rooting him on. I wanted him to keep punching me because at the time it felt good, and I liked the feeling of punching him back. These types of things continued and are still hard to fight for me at times. About a year and a half ago, I'd finally hit what some might call the rock bottom. I had cheated on my wife for the second time in our relationship and believed I had lost her permanently. I remember the day she told me she was seeing someone else, and I remember punching my head repeatedly and calling her stupid. And calling myself stupid. The lumps on my head the following day didn't make me feel any better. Then came the day when I met with her for what I thought was going to be the final time. I was on my knees in a parking lot crying and just begging and pleading with her to give me another chance, promising her that things would be different, even though at that time I didn't really know that I was being honest or that they could be different. She left me there in the parking lot that day. I jumped in my car immediately, drove off as fast as I could, and decided to stop in the parking lot at some point because I was driving so recklessly. I picked up the phone and called my friend, and as I talked to my friend, I took the keys from my car and started cutting into my arms, scraping over and over again with the dull key until I could see blood. I remember praying one day thereafter, God, please let her come back to me. I promise that I'll treat her the way I should. I promise I'll never hurt her again. And if you would just give me one more chance. He heard me that day, and my wife did end up coming back. Our partnership was reinstated a few months later. This was when I started to feel like this Godfellow might not be so bad. Almost a year ago, me and my wife decided to go to church. Being gay and walking into a church is a rather risky task, yet God led us where we belonged for sure. Walking into Campbell United Church of Christ was the most amazing experience ever. It was so filled with love, it was overwhelming. I remember two straight women immediately coming up to us and welcoming us into the church. The coolest part of going into the church was when we saw the pastor come out for worship. I saw this woman with spiky hair, similar to mine, what appeared to be a wife-beater tank top, and a rainbow cross draped around her neck. And she immediately came over to us, and I couldn't really think at that moment of anybody much cooler than this that God could have put into my life. From that day, the love of Jesus has continued to wedge his way into my life through this woman, this pastor, and her church. The day that sticks out to me most as a defining moment in finding Christ happened at a church gathering. I received a call from my grandmother that she was in the hospital, and when I hung up the phone, I started crying. My pastor, without hesitation, reached over and grabbed my hand and started praying for both my grandmother and for myself. She didn't care who was around or if we looked silly praying in the middle of this gathering. Weirdest of all, I felt like she actually cared about me and those yucky feelings that I had bottled up inside. I remember this as the day when I knew for sure that I wanted to follow Jesus and that it was my every intention to show other people the love that was being given to me that day. Surely the love of Jesus had to be what was radiating from this woman. My life has changed drastically since finding Jesus. However, I still fail. A few months ago was the last time I cut myself. I had found out that my mentor, pastor, was leaving our congregation, and I was in the midst of preparing my heart for that when I found out that my mom had been diagnosed with ovarian cancer, and that my sister's doctor had just informed her that the baby she was carrying was not signaling a heartbeat. My wife was away on work, and I was home alone. My pastor had always told me to call her if I wanted to cut myself, but how embarrassing would that be? And what would she do anyways? Put me in a mental institution? I decided to pick up the knife and do it again. It was different this time. I actually felt it cutting my skin. I felt guilt. I felt like I was doing something wrong. A few days later, I had confessed my actions to my pastor. I walked around with a sweatshirt on to cover the wounds for several weeks, and pretty much still do. I was at pizza dinner with my pastor one night when I'd accidentally pushed my sleeves up to eat. When she had gotten up from the table, I suppose she made eye contact with the scars on my arm, but she didn't say anything. When she came back, she gently placed her hand upon the wounds and prayed for me. She wasn't disappointed in me, and she didn't stop loving me. She just prayed for me. I think Jesus Christ shows up for all of us, however we decide to let him. He gave me her. He showed me his unconditional love in human form through my pastor. He showed me the person I could only wish to become. God loves me, and I'm finally sure of it. I repeatedly drown my Mario, but he continues to extend my lives. He won't let me quit the game until I get to the princess, however that's gonna look. So I say to you, in the great words of my mentor, don't drown your Mario. God is with all of us. but we won't see Him there until we are ready to see Him. His love's unconditional, and He has a plan for each and every one of us. I like to think that He gave me these experiences as a way to help the future youth through similar trials. It was all in His will. Each and every day I wake up, I thank God for His love, for my pastor's love, and ask His blessings upon my journeys with Him. He never gave up on me, and now it's my time to never give up on Him.